The stench is unbearable. It clings to the velvet curtains, seeps into the rushes on the floor, and coils like a living thing around the bed of the once great King of England. The smell of rotting flesh. It's January 1546, and you are standing in the private chambers of Henry VIII, the man who once bent a kingdom to his will. He is 55 years old, yet looks decades older. His massive frame, swollen with decades of gluttony, spreads across the royal bed like a dying beast. And under the furs and silks meant to hide his decline, he is slowly decomposing while still alive. The room is thick with burning herbs, rosewater, and vinegar, the desperate attempt of his physicians to fight the putrid air. But nothing can mask it. Servants whisper that you can smell the king before you see him. His ulcerated legs, riddled with infection, ooze pus and blood into bandages that must be changed multiple times a day. The moment the bandages come off, the chamber becomes a tomb of living death. Once, Henry was the golden prince of Europe. In his youth, he cut a figure of pure magnificence, tall, broad-shouldered, and devastatingly handsome. He jousted, danced, and hunted with the energy of a man who seemed born to conquer the world. His charm was legendary. His presence could dazzle allies and terrify enemies. But that was another life. Now, that golden prince is trapped inside a body that has become a prison. Years of overindulgence, disease, and accidents have reduced Henry to a shadow of the man he was. A jousting injury in 1536 left him with a crippled leg, which turned into ulcers that never healed. Unable to exercise, he gorged himself on banquets fit for 10 men, meats, pies, and oceans of wine. By the last year of his life, he weighed close to 400 pounds, needing mechanical hoists just to be lifted from his bed to a chair. But the horror of Henry's final days is not just in his flesh, it's in his mind. The king who once commanded nations now lives haunted by ghosts of his own making. Every night, the corridors of Whitehall echo with his paranoid mutterings. He sees betrayal in every glance. He remembers the faces of the wives he cast aside, Catherine of Aragon, whom he humiliated, Anne Boleyn, whom he sent to the block, Catherine Howard, his young bride, executed for adultery. The wives he loved, the friends he betrayed, the ministers he executed, they crowd the edges of his vision, specters of a reign soaked in blood and fear. And yet, no one dares leave him. The king's bedchamber has become a theater of forced loyalty. Physicians kneel by the bed, afraid to admit that their treatments do nothing. Courtiers smile, bow, and murmur comfort, while holding scented cloths over their noses. Everyone waits, trapped in a palace that reeks of death, knowing that to displease the king, even now, could be fatal. Henry knows he is dying. He can feel his body rotting beneath the weight of his own crown. The fiery power that made him one of the most feared kings in history is flickering out, but his rage and paranoia burn brighter than ever. Outside, the winter wind rattles the palace windows, carrying the scent of frozen Thames air. Inside, the king lies sweating in a sickly warmth, surrounded by candles and whispered prayers, clinging to the last shreds of life and authority. His soul is a battlefield, haunted by regret, weighed down by fear, and stalked by the inevitable approach of death. And yet, the kingdom holds its breath. Because when Henry VIII finally dies, the question is not just who will inherit his throne, but whether the man who ruled through fear will face the judgment of the ghosts he created. If this 800-word Section 1 works for your style, I can now craft Section 2, 800 words, where we dive into the grisly daily routine of his final months and the treacherous games of the courtiers circling a dying king, the palace of fear and filth. The sun rises over Whitehall Palace, but light does little to banish the darkness inside. The great halls, once alive with music and feasts, now echo with the shuffling feet of servants carrying pails of foul water. Every day begins with a ritual of horror in the king's chambers. Before any food is served or prayers are muttered, the first task is to tend to the royal body, a task that no one envies. The king's bed is stripped, revealing stained sheets and oozing bandages. His ulcer-ridden leg, the source of the room's unbearable odor, is examined and cleaned. Pus, blood, and the stink of infection fill the air. Surgeons, sweating under the pressure of royal scrutiny, apply poultices of honey, vinegar, and herbs, praying they will keep the gangrene from spreading. Henry groans and curses, his voice shaking the tapestries on the walls. He has no patience for weakness, yet his own body betrays him with every movement. Servants whisper that his temper is as volatile as gunpowder. The wrong glance, a trembling hand, even a cough could spark an explosion of royal rage. And everyone in this palace knows the truth. The king may be dying, but he can still destroy you. Beyond the bedchamber, the palace has become a nest of scheming vipers. Every lord, every advisor, every servant is playing a silent game of survival. Henry's paranoia infects them all. The king's will is the only law that matters, and his will changes with the wind. One day he favors a minister, showering him with lands and titles. The next day, that same man's head might roll on the tower's chopping block. Everyone wants a piece of the dying king's power. The Seymours, family of his third wife Jane, whisper that the throne should pass to young Prince Edward without interference. The Howards, connected to his executed fifth wife, Catherine, plot to restore their influence. Religious factions, Catholics and Protestants, circle like wolves, knowing that the king's last breath could decide the soul of England. In the corridors outside Henry's room, spies and informers lurk. Servants carry gossip like weapons. Even a single careless word about the king's health could be twisted into treason. No one trusts anyone. Meanwhile, Henry eats like a man trying to outpace death. His meals are a grotesque spectacle of indulgence. Roasted swans, venison pies, puddings drowned in cream, oceans of wine and ale. But digestion is no kindness to him anymore. His bloated stomach aches, and sometimes he soils himself before he can reach the privy. The privy itself, the king's close stool, is a padded chair with a chamber pot, attended by the groom of the stool, a man whose job is to clean the king after he relieves himself. It is a position of trust, but also humiliation, for even this act is political. Being near the king, even in filth, means access to whispers of power. Yet, despite all the pomp and gold around him, Henry lives like a prisoner of his own body. He rarely leaves his chambers, carried in a litter when he does. His festering wounds and colossal size make walking a torment. The once mighty king, who hunted deer through royal forests and danced at lavish banquets, now sits in shadows, waiting for physicians to poke, prod, and drain his decaying body. But perhaps the most terrifying part of Henry's final months isn't the smell, the pain, or even the scheming courtiers. It is his growing obsession with death and the afterlife. He orders priests to his bedside, demanding prayers and absolution, yet he cannot let go of his paranoia. He asks, "Who is loyal? Who will betray me when I'm gone?" Some nights he refuses to sleep, convinced that death will strike when his eyes are closed. Servants report that he talks to shadows, sometimes calling out the names of the dead, wives, friends, enemies alike. The palace grows quieter with each passing day. No music, no laughter, only whispers and the echo of the king's labored breathing. And as winter grips England, everyone in Whitehall knows. The great line of the Tudor dynasty is rotting in his den, and his end will not be gentle.